When I was giving my speech last night, the last thing I said was who I dedicated the award to.
Yes.
And that is exactly how I keep myself grounded. I dedicated my award to the 2.5 billion with a B, billion.
Coming from.
And one thing that I'm going to say this here, because this was an advice my dad always gave me when I was in school and trying to figure out my career path. And he was very similar to what I tell my daughter now, but he always used to tell me in a slightly different way. He said, do in your career what you would do for free. And if you can do that, you'll have success.
Oh, I love it. Welcome to a new episode of Business Meets Live. Today we're here with amazing Suman Roy, who actually flew in all the way from Canada. We are here in Hong Kong. Congratulations for winning the award of the CEO of the Year. Also, you have won an award before about the Visionary of the Year, right?
Thank you.
You are a person who all the way from India over the US, living in Toronto, Canada for a long time, working with the Prime Minister, the Canadian ministers, the United Nations, and you've been a leader in so many different fields and won awards.
Yes.
How do you actually stay grounded after all of this and what you're doing?
So before even I get to that question, I do want to congratulate you for an amazing award you won last night in Hong Kong.
Thank you so much.
So Businesswoman of the Year for consulting, that is not a easy feat. So congratulations, your work speaks for itself.
I appreciate it.
So no, that's awesome. So when we talk about keeping ourselves grounded, when I was giving my speech last night, the last thing I said was who I dedicated the award to.
Yes.
And that is exactly how I keep myself grounded. I dedicated my award to the 2.5 billion with a B, billion people who last night while I was accepting the award was going to bed hungry. So as much as we were in the Ritz-Carlton and looking all dabby and all great, but the cause is very depressing. And I think that is what keeps me grounded, that I need to be there for them and I can't lose my focus. Sitting at the UN or speaking to the Prime Minister of Canada, or yesterday we were talking to a prince from Gambia.
Yes.
It's exciting, but that is just a byproduct. The reason I'm here is because people need help and we are here to help. As long as I can keep that in mind, I think we're in good shape.
Yes. Well, thank you for doing the work that you do. And I remember on your speech, you were actually mentioning that your company or your NGO actually started with like a 14-day trial. So I've been wondering, like, you founded Feed Scarborough, right?
Yeah.
And you wanted to tackle food apartheid. So what was like this defining moment when
100%.
you decided, okay, now I'm going to make a business out of it, or an NGO, and I'm continuing longer than 14 days? Because I think I remember you said you were just talking to some neighbors and you just like started it.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of story because this is one of my very favorite stories, all-time stories. So it's the first day of pandemic. The whole world is shutting down, the COVID pandemic. So is Canada. Everything was shutting down, and I saw on my social media that our only food bank in our community was closing its door as well. And for the right reason. They were in a basement of a church run by all seniors, so they couldn't safely manage the operation. And at that time, all we heard was the curve can be flattened in 14 days.
One question, when you talk about the food bank, this is like not for the whole population, this is just like for
anybody who
elderly,
needs. No, it's anybody who needs.
Okay.
Anybody in Canada especially, we have food banks, and anybody who needs access to food, they go there for a free hamper.
Okay.
Or free food. Not a
that's
whole
nice.
lot, but it's enough for a few days of the week, and they can go and access that food.
Great.
So people going to a food bank, and in food bank they don't serve caviar. So it's a very basic food. And if somebody is going to a food bank in the best of times, pre-pandemic, you can imagine what pandemic would do to them.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where we came from, and I just looked in my social media and saw that, and I said, you know what, it's 2 weeks, let's help our community. So I went to my neighbors, knocked on their door and said, hey, come on out. While we have our prime minister, our premier, our mayor, and the whole world saying, stay indoors, don't come out. And I'm knocking on people's door, come on out. We need to help our community.
You didn't get fined for that? For
No, we didn't have the fine in Canada. Luckily, we are in a very different environment. But also, I think starting from our government to the police, and everybody realized why we were doing. And we needed to help the community. There were stories at that time coming from Italy, how it is being riots because people are hungry.
Yeah.
And it was a tough time for everybody.
Yeah.
So they realized that these kind of support needed to happen.
Yeah.
So we started doing that. We were planning for 14 days. And 5 years later, this is the longest 14 days I've ever had. It just doesn't end. However, I think the turning point, which I think the moral of the story, is at that time, everything was closed. So was my kids' school and everything. So every morning we used to meet, get food hampers built, and then drop it off at people's doors who needed food. And then afternoon I used to come home and spend time with my family. So one day, it's just a couple of months, we are just starting. We are struggling because there is no money to buy food, to give it to people. We are looking for donations. If somebody's giving us a $10 donation, we are like, yes, we got $10, we can buy a little more food. So that was our mindset at that time. And one afternoon, I was playing in my backyard with my daughter. My phone rang. I picked up my phone. And this lady just started asking questions. No introduction, nothing. So all questions about what we are doing, how we are funding it, all of those kind of questions. So at that time, we were getting a lot of media. So in my mind, it's probably another media channel asking me questions for an interview, for an article, or whatever that is. So that went on for almost 15 minutes. Finally, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. So I said, sorry, you've been asking me questions. Now it's my turn. Let me ask you questions. So I said, who are you? And why are you asking these questions? And she said, well, my boss wants to make a small donation to your organization. So my job is to figure out which organization is the best. So I'm doing my research. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. I get it.
Would have been nice if you
said that earlier. Exactly. So I said, okay, no problem. So we spoke for another few minutes, and I said, okay, let me ask you, so if you have a boss who wants to make a donation and you're vetting out, what is the definition of that small donation? Is it $20? Is it $100? Is it $50? In my mind, I was thinking, if this person gives me $500, wow, how much food can I buy to give people? That's where my mindset is. And I'm hoping that she says $500. And she said, it's not much. It's around $100,000.
$100,000.
So I said, stop. Can you say it again? So I asked her 3 times and she started laughing. I said, do you realize that in this context, I don't even know how many zeros are there in $100,000? I said, if you told me $100, I would still be happy. And she started laughing. She said, no, we see you doing a great job. We want to support you. So my boss wants to do this. And I think I've made up my mind that your organization is the one who needs this money.
Wow.
So I finished that conversation. And I'm sitting down. I'm looking at my daughter's face. My daughter says, what happened, Daddy? I said, if she's giving me $100,000, I need to open a bank account. How can I clear that check? Before that, it was never a thought because we never thought we were going to do what we are doing. So I'm like, okay, then tomorrow I guess I need to call up my banker and say, hey, we need to open a community account because I'm going to have a check to clear. And then my mind went, okay, so what can we do with this money? How can we help the people even more? And the biggest issue that we have, and it's globally, it is not only in Canada, when we talk of food security, when we talk about hunger, many people, including our decision makers, our policy makers, our politicians, in their mind, okay, let's make some donation. Let's give some food. But that doesn't solve hunger.
Yeah, it's like with the fishing, right? You
Exactly.
need to kind of like educate somebody on how to fish instead of like giving them the fish.
100%. So it is Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. So that's why our organization's vision is more about hunger-free, resilient Scarborough, hunger-free, resilient Canada, and hunger-free, resilient world. And resilient is the key word.
One quick question in here, because again, like coming from Germany, I have different perceptions eventually on how the concept works. You mentioned in the beginning that you were dropping off the food at people's doors. How did you know of who is in need? Because in Germany, I know that from the unemployment agency, you would know who has a low budget. And normally, like I thought, like also seeing it on the US, like in those movies, people would go to like the church and go there basically for the food instead of the other way around.
Yeah. So
do you have like data?
Yeah. So I'll dig into a little more. I was just going very high level.
Yeah.
So when we decided that the first day that we're going to help the community, we got together in a place, just our neighbors, and said, let's put some money on the table, go to the grocery store, buy some food, and we're going to give it to people. Great idea. We are all excited. We're going to help our community. We go, we shop for enough for around 30 families, come back, and then we are scratching our head, who are these 30 families? So I said, no problem, I have an answer. We're just going to go reach out to the food bank and say, tell us who was coming to a food bank, and we're going to give them the food. Great idea. So we call the food bank. Food bank says, sorry, it's confidential. We can't give you anything. So I'm like, that doesn't help. So people are hungry, we have food, but we don't know how to give it. So I said, no problem, we're going to put a social media call out and say, if anybody is desperate and it's hurting, just let us know. We might be able to help.
But how do you know that people are not just like saying to take advantage?
So it can. And for where we come, and even till today, all our program is on trust. Like we believe that the goodness in the heart of the people. You know, this is not luxury food. This is not a lot of food. It is just the basics. And if you think you need it, you need it. And if you think you have enough not to need it, then you don't need it. And that is there. There is also stigma around accepting free food. A lot of people, even when they're suffering, we know in Canada, for example.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. We know in Canada, only 25% of people who are suffering from food insecurity actually goes to a food bank.
Wow, 25%.
Only 25. 75% of the people are suffering silently. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And primarily it's the stigma. There is some accessibility issues as well, but majorly it is because of the stigma, because I don't want to go and stand in line to grab free food that my neighbor will see me standing in line. I don't want my kids' teachers to see me because maybe the kid's teacher is a volunteer at the food bank. So we don't want to see that. So that is why people silently suffer rather than... So is there some people who should not be accessing, are accessing? 100%.
Yeah.
Like you can't stop that.
Yeah.
But the majority is not.
I see.
And we can make majority suffer because of a handful of people.
Okay, let's go back to the vision that you just mentioned, also with the resilience. Sorry,
yes.
I interrupted you.
No, that's great.
But
It's a great conversation.
Good to know. It goes back to the basics.
100%.
Because every country runs those
differently.
things differently.
So resiliency, for us, it is, and especially this is the thing in the developed countries, because when we talk of food insecurity, it is very different from developing to developed countries. The issue is very different. If you're looking at Africa, you're looking at Asia, you're looking at South America, a lot of these places, one of the biggest issues of food insecurity is the food itself. There is not enough food in those countries to feed everybody. But in developed countries like North America, like Western Europe, that's not the problem.
Yeah, we throw so much food away.
Exactly, I was getting to that. In Canada, today, we have 1 in 4 Canadians who do not have access to good food.
That's a lot.
25%. However, 46% of food coming into Canada or in Canada goes to waste.
Wow.
So something's not right. So it is more of an access issue. It's not only just food waste. It's an access issue in North America. And one thing that I always say, and especially in my journey at the United Nations, or the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, whenever you go in those places, the majority of the conversation around food insecurity is focusing on developing countries.
Exactly.
So when you go outside and ask anybody that, oh, what is an image of hunger that comes to your mind?
Africa.
Exactly.
Right? We have it on YouTube, the ads, and on TV.
100%. That poor kid sitting on the street, that black kid sitting on side of the street, you can literally count his rib cage with an empty bowl,
Yes.
begging for food.
Yes.
You have that in your mind.
Exactly.
But today, 1 in 4 Canadians do not have access to enough food.
That's crazy.
And the number is slightly higher in the United States, the richest country in the world.
Which is crazy. Like, I lived in Las Vegas, and Vegas at that time was so famous for their buffets and how much they threw away.
Exactly. Now, luckily, it's not as post-COVID, that has changed quite a
Yes.
bit. I'm thankful for that. But also, it is because the concentration of wealth, it is very different. So, for example, I'm going to take Toronto, for example.
Yeah.
In a city like Toronto, our minimum wage is around little over $16. But a livable wage is almost $25.
Wow.
So there's a huge gap.
A big one.
There's a huge gap because minimum wage, by law, you have to pay the people. But with that money, people still can survive.
Absolutely.
We did, and this was a couple of years ago, we did a survey in our community. And a lot of people, we did a math, especially those who are in minimum wage job, after paying rent and utilities, they had $3.48 left in their wallet per day. Even the transit cost over $6. So for them to keep that job, they need to spend $6 to go to job and come back. Where do you think they're going to get food? Where do they think they're going to buy clothes?
Yeah.
So it's a huge issue. So when we say resiliency in our organization, we build capacity for our community members,
Yeah.
so they can have a living wage job.
And how do you do this? So you basically educate them?
So we have a couple of different ways. Yeah.
courses,
So
or-
we have 2 general streams that we follow. One is empower them by training them, because we have a lot of new immigrants coming in to our community.
Right.
For them, this is Latin and Greek. They don't understand the culture. Great example, some of my volunteers who are brand new to Canada, and they have a shift at 9 o'clock, they show up at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, your shift was 9 o'clock. Yeah, so it's just an hour late. It's not that bad.
Culture difference.
It's a huge culture difference because where I come from, an hour late is not a big deal. It's just an hour. So they're saying that they're carrying that in. But in Canada, if your shift is at 9 o'clock, at 8:45 you need to be at work, ready to start working at 9. But like, these are just basic things. How many times I've seen resumes with photo, with date of birth, with citizenship? No, in North America we don't do that.
Exactly. It's a no-go.
No. But back home, they do that because that's important.
Yeah.
Whether you're male or female, you need to write. There is
Yeah.
no other gender. It's only two genders.
Exactly.
You need to take a pick.
Yeah.
So it's a very different culture. So we train our community into all these, how to be successful. And then we put them in front of employers.
Now, how big is your community now? Like after a couple of years, how many volunteers do you have? How many people are you serving?
Yeah, so we are serving close to 8,500 people every week.
And this is just Toronto?
Not even Toronto, in Scarborough, which is a suburb of Toronto.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, 8,500 folks every week we are serving.
Wow.
We have close to 420 volunteers who come every week to help us run that.
Impressive. So
it's a big operation.
What's your biggest challenge now, and where do you see the organization in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so these are 2 different questions. One of my biggest challenge, and this is something I struggle with a lot, and so does my whole team. We talk about resiliency. We started with just food bank in the very early days of pandemic. Our community overall thinks of us as a food bank organization.
Okay.
They don't understand that just doing food bank 40 years later we'll be still doing food banks.
Yeah.
There's no end to this. And we'll be going in front of media, we're going to crying, oh, look how busy it is, we need more donations, and people will come and give us some donations, we're going to keep on feeding people. This vicious cycle will go on.
Yeah.
When we look into building resiliency, it is a very different mindset, because that is where you cut that cycle. That no, you don't need to come back to a food bank because now you have a good job. You and your wife both have a decent job that you can make enough living.
Maybe you
not
can
to come
even
to a food bank.
volunteer and give back to the
100%,
community.
100%, and people do that
Yeah.
a lot. But our regular community members, who are our main donors, they do not always comprehend the shift,
Interesting.
which is a huge challenge for us, because it is those donation dollars
And
that keeps our lights on.
And I assume they must be well educated because
They
they're
are
a little bit wealthier.
100%, but it's what we have seen, it's not always about education. People feel good writing that check and knowing that food is going to that poor person or that homeless person across the street. But they are not willing always to write that check knowing that, you know what, we're going to actually have a classroom. We are going to get speakers, we are going to get professors to come in and teach. We are going to hire somebody to actually go and sell this program to employers. So they come and employ our community members who need help. And that shift in mind, it is hard for many in our community who are donors. So it's a different mindset.
I see.
And that is one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah. Well, when I finally make it to Canada, to Toronto, I'm happy to give a couple of educational trainings.
Good, we will need
To
that.
give at least some kind of value back to the
100%.
community,
No,
because I
we
love
will-
what you're doing.
Thank you. We will certainly need that. But to answer your question, where we are going,
Yeah.
it is a little bit different than just that. So we have, in our organization, we have strategized into having 3 different levels of programming. One will be community, our local program with Feed Scarborough. Then we have a little more, which is national, called the Hunger Free Canada, Canada Sans Fam, where we work, and then the global piece is the Zero Hunger Project. So the whole point of it is we see many organizations across the world who are doing one thing and doing a great job. Like those who run food banks, they just run food banks.
And they're good
They
at
don't.
that.
They're good at that. They don't do anything else.
Yeah.
But
No
that is
innovation.
exactly, and that is not the solution. So what we do is we empower communities. We empower these small organizations, capacity build, so they can go one step forward and help them in a meaningful way to build resiliency and not just a handout. And I'll give you a great example.
Yeah.
This is a couple of months ago. I was in my office. My office is on top of one of our food banks. This lady walked in the door, no appointments, nothing, and said, I need your help. And I said, okay, what help do you need? If it's food bank is open downstairs. He said, no. I am going through a gender-based violence situation. My husband beats me up and all of that. So I said, okay, so we can do a few things. I can call up a shelter system if you're willing to move out. If it is bad and you need the police involved, I can call the police right away and they will help you. Or if you want a social worker to talk to, and I can get you a social worker from another organization, because we don't do that. And she said, no, I don't need any of that. I need you to call my husband. I said, no, why would I call your husband? I don't even know you nor your husband. And she said, no, because he likes you guys. We trust you because you give us food every week. So we trust you. If you tell him, he's going to listen to you.
I see.
So
where she's
of
coming
course,
from.
yeah. So I of course couldn't do that. But that kind of gives me that when we are giving food, a livelihood to somebody, people trust us. So why not use that trust to build resiliency and give them other programs that's going to help them in the long run?
Absolutely.
And that is where our mindset comes in, and that's why we are doing a lot of global community building, advocacy, because especially going back to the UN and FAO conversation, you can never solve a problem unless and until you actually identify the problem.
Yeah.
And when we are not even talking about the first world countries, the developed countries, actually having a hunger challenge, we will never solve that problem.
Yeah.
So to have those conversations, that is what we are doing with the zero. So that's where we are going right now.
Interesting. So, a fun fact, because I'm a business owner, my consulting company is in Shanghai. A long time, I didn't even know. I've always done charity and donated it regularly, but I never knew that company-wise, as a business owner, I can even have like some advantages, and there's a specific amount per year that my company can officially even donate.
Yes.
And that is something, but nobody ever told me, because my accountants or my finance department is just not as strong.
Savvy, maybe, yeah.
Exactly. So that's something
like
also
in
good to keep
Canada
in mind.
or in the US, I know these two countries really well, that if you make donations to a charity, you can write off your expense.
Exactly.
Whether it's personal or business. If you make a personal donation to a registered charity, the whole thing is tax-free. You can write that off from your taxes. Business goes the same way.
Yeah.
And that helps.
Yeah.
That helps us drastically. It helps somebody who's making a donation, and that's what keeps our lights on.
And that's also what I've noticed, like a lot of very successful people, they love donating to charities. Every one of them
Absolutely.
has a favorite charity, basically.
100%. I was actually reading an article this morning about Jack Ma's goal and future plans.
Okay.
About how he wants to retire at 55 and then focus all on his everything on philanthropy and his
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah.
And that is what he is focused on. And he had a list of what kind of philanthropy he's going to focus on. A lot was focused on China, of course, but really good about environment, about Chinese women's soccer. So quite a few things, and that's what happens. You look at Bill Gates.
Yeah, I was about to
All of
say
it.
that. Actually, there is an episode, a documentary about Bill Gates and on Netflix.
Okay.
That was very interesting about the different initiatives that he and Melinda did. Was
Yeah.
very interesting.
And so people are there. I think one of our biggest challenges, and going back to my challenge, I think one of our biggest challenges is educating them on what actually makes a difference.
Yeah. Let's quickly talk about your book, and then I'm going to ask you a few more personal questions and also
100%.
about the UN. Tell me a bit about it, and where can I
Yeah.
get this wonderful book? And thank you so much for gifting it
Of
to me. I
course. So
appreciate
this
it.
is called the Zero Hunger Project, very similar name to my podcast, which is also Zero Hunger Project.
Nice.
And our organization, which is called the Zero Hunger Project. It's all in line.
And your podcast is on YouTube.
It's
Apple
everywhere, anywhere you
Podcasts?
get your podcast.
Okay.
It's anywhere you get your podcast, and YouTube for the video.
Okay.
And where we generally in our podcast as well, we talk a lot about global hunger, but right now we are in the process of having these conversations with policymakers, with professors, kind of understanding that what would actually make a difference. And it's a
Yeah.
global conversation. It's not only to Canada.
Just speaking about this, we still wanted to talk about the sustainable
Development goals.
from the UN, right?
We can talk for a few hours now.
Yeah. And I recently got shocked because sometimes I work with high schools, business schools in China, and we would have such a UN SDG projects. And I feel like I was shocked on how far away we are from achieving even one simple out of the goals until like 2030.
There's no way 2030. I don't think it'll even be 2040, but I'm going to be hopeful, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I think the biggest challenge that we have with any of these initiatives is the political will.
Maybe you quickly have to say what exactly are the SDGs, because I feel like, except for maybe the kids who might learn it at school, I don't think a lot of people know about it.
No,
right?
unfortunately not, and especially in North America, not even the kids are taught that in school in many of the boards. No, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you also mentioned like in Europe, not many people would actually know about it.
Exactly. So the SDGs, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have come up with in 2015. And it was a 15-year journey, and they said by 2030, if all of those goals are followed, and there are markers.
Give us some examples also.
So the first one is no poverty. The second one is zero hunger.
Yeah.
Exactly, where I got this name from.
Yeah.
So like that, the last one is for the partnerships. There is for environment, there is for gender equity, there is for decent work.
Yeah.
So all of these, and the UN strongly believes that if all of them were done together, we will have seriously a better world. And I agree. They are really amazing SDGs. But in my opinion, I don't think we have done a lot of work in promoting it and talking about it and diligently working towards it.
Absolutely.
So just to give you an example, today in 2025, we are 4 years away from the 2030 goal. And on food security, on zero hunger, we are at the same levels we were in 2015.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So we did a little bit, but then with COVID, we came back.
Right.
And so the reality is, it is hard. And and from a politics side of it, if we are busy giving excuses, then we can never attain the 2030 goals. So that's why I talk about political will.
Yeah.
Because the policymakers, the politicians around the world, it's not one country, around the world needs to really be serious, identifying that how they are messing up and how they are actually not doing better, and go and fix it.
And how did you now make it from starting the Feed Scarborough? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a mouthful.
To working with the UN, and especially also working with like the Prime Minister and like the other ministers of Canada. How did you get there?
So that's an interesting story. So last year, in the beginning of last year, out of the blue, I got an email from somebody in Bangkok saying, we hold a global poverty reduction conference. Would you be interested coming and speaking there?
Oh, nice.
And I said, how do you even know us? We are in a small place in Canada, Scarborough. So some university, and the name I'm forgetting right now, so students in that university did a case study on us.
Nice.
And from that case study, these folks in Bangkok figured it out. So of course, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
The reason they called us, because from day one, we always talked about a three-prong approach to food insecurity. So we have the emergency food program, which is handing out food.
Okay.
We have the long-term impact program, which is career development, business incubation, all of that.
Okay.
And then the
Number 3?
third is policy development and research. So if all these three work together, we can have a hunger-free, resilient world. But only doing one and not the others, or two and not the third, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
So all our programs from day one has been based in that principle. So when I was invited to Bangkok, it was to speak about this principle, and it was probably people from around 50 countries, and most of them were researchers, professors, and
well done.
It was great. It was an amazing experience. I felt like I'm the most uneducated person in that whole room.
Oh, really?
But it was because everybody was professors and PhDs and doctors and all that jazz, and they were amazing. But after I had those conversations, I sat back and thought there were 50 countries. I was the only one from Canada talking about this.
Wow.
So I think our government needs to know. So technically, I did represent our government, our country, on a global platform. So when I went back, I reached out to our minister who's in charge of the children's and families, and I said, I need to meet with you to tell you what I just did. And she was amazing. Her name is Minister Jenna Suds. And Minister Suds said, okay, come on over to Ottawa, let's talk.
Nice.
So I drive down with a couple of my staff members, and we sit down and give her the presentation. And she looked at me and says, oh, I wish I can take you with me to the UN as an official delegate. And I looked at her and said, what's stopping you? Like, why wish?
Wow.
Make it happen. And she said, well, the deadline is passed. I'm like, no. Canada has a lot of clout at the UN. So you being a minister of Canada, I'm sure you can figure it out. And they did. Then her team was amazing. The Prime Minister's team was amazing. So they figured it out, and they put me on that list to go last year to be an official delegate of Canada at the UN on the Sustainable Development Goals.
Amazing.
And there was no looking back, because our Canada's permanent mission...
sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So Canada's ambassador to the UN, Bob Ray, He's amazing. He is a rock when it comes to knowledge on global affairs and humanitarian affairs. And Bob Ray is also the president of ECOSOC, which is a wing of the UN who actually owns the Sustainable Development Goals. So he's the president of overall.
Wow.
So with him, I clicked really well. I take him as my mentor. I learned a lot from him, his journey as a politician in Canada, as a leader of the opposition, to premier, to where he is right now. And I learned a lot from him. Sometimes when we chat, and sometimes I'm just following his journey. And so his journey has helped me drastically to understand and do things like that. He was actually on my podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, great. I should
Which
check
is
it out.
and which is amazing, because he was talking about everything that's happening in the US right now, and how it is being counterintuitive and actually dragging the world back instead of moving us forward. With USAID supports being gone, it is not a nice place right now. The wars, everywhere the war is happening, in Gaza. And keep in mind, for the records, I am not an expert, or I do not have any right to tell any country how they can protect themselves or what is their political way. That's not my job here. But when an innocent child is being starved to death because somebody's not letting food go to them, that is where I have the problem. The humanitarian cause is huge. It's not that we don't have food there. We have food at the borders. But they just can't get to that poor hungry kid or that pregnant mom, just because it's a political will that we're going to starve them. That is where my issue is.
That's crazy.
It is insane, and things like this is happening around the world.
Well, first of all, I want to say, like, I love seeing how a normal person coming from a completely different background, right, just like made such a big impact, right? And as you said, like, oh, you went to these conferences with researchers, and but you made an impact. So it's a really good reminder again that no matter what your background is,
100%.
and I mean, you were born in India, right? I mean, you're a Canadian citizen and everything.
Listen, when I moved to Canada,
no excuses,
no,
right?
when
everybody can make something
when I
happen.
moved to Canada, the first few weeks, I didn't have a place to live. I slept on the side of the street. I was homeless because I was in the minds. It's not that my parents didn't have money back home in India. They did.
Okay.
I was one of those kids who's like, I'm not going to take anything from my parents. I got to build it on my own. And that was more of my ego at that point. So I literally had $42 saved, and I entered Canada with $42 in my pocket. With $42, you don't get a place to live. No. I was guarding that $42 because I needed that for food, because that was more important to me. And then I slowly worked my way through it, found a job, and then that's history. But so I always say, if your eyes are on the goal, and yesterday at our event, somebody said it very beautifully, that nobody sets out to become a leader. They set out for a passion, and they become a leader. And I think that's something that strikes strongly with me, because if you asked me 5 years ago that you will run this organization called Feed Scarborough or Zero Hunger Project, I would laugh at them. Because there is no way I would do that, because that wasn't my career path. I was a chef by trade. And that is where my career path was. But look at us now. And having this conversation. And one thing that I say, it's people ask me about motivation. And when I was almost 10 years ago, I was a national corporate chef for a company called Campbell Soup. It's a global company. Campbell Soup.
Campbell Soup,
I was a national corporate chef for Canada. And at that point, 10 years ago, my paycheck was exactly double than today what I draw from my organization. Right? It's not that my organization doesn't afford. I'd rather have another couple of employees more, rather than go crazy on my own paycheck.
That's amazing.
So, saying that, sometimes I get the question that, what's your motivation? Why would you do that? And I said, when I was in corporates and jobs like that, every Friday evening when I used to come home, I used to have a sigh of relief. It's Friday.
Yeah.
And then Monday morning, it was like, oh my God, it's Monday, another week.
Oh, I know so many people who are like
Do
this.
that. But in the last 5 years, after I've done this, I have the complete opposite reaction. Fridays, I'm like, oh my God, why is it Friday already? And Monday, I'm like, yes, it's Monday. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So that talks volume. That talks volume. I tell my daughter, who's 9 years old, I say, I never go to work. I never go to work because it's not work for me.
Yeah, it's like
It's fun. Exactly. It's fun. And when I wake up from my bed every morning and walk into my bathroom, I remember the faces who's going to gain and have a livelihood today because I'm pulling myself out of bed. And once you have that feeling, there is no money, nothing in this world that can stop you.
I love it. It already answers a couple of my other questions here. Now, before we go a bit deeper into your personal life, and I'd love to talk a bit about your family as well. We met last night, I think at 11 p.m.
Probably.
That's when we finally
Or
walked
11:30, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
When we were almost being kicked out of the hall.
Yeah, when we finally were able to eat after the award ceremony, which was actually very beautiful. So
Fantastic.
And now, just like 12 hours later, no, less than 12 hours later, you're here doing the podcast. You started your own podcast recently. What motivated you to do the podcast? Because I know you're very busy in many ways. And you said, many people told you, Suman, you should have a podcast. You didn't do it. What made the difference then?
So, yeah, for a long time, I had many people ask me to do podcasts, and I really didn't care for it. I'm like, no time for that. I don't have time. That's a lot of work, not happening. But recently, when I say recently, I'm saying maybe this year, in the beginning of this year, in January, I wanted to figure out how I can reach more people around the world with these conversations.
I see.
Because I am privileged to sit with the president of ECOSOC or Canada's ambassador and have a conversation. I'm privileged and honored. But majority of the people aren't. So how do they hear or they listen, and where do they get their marching orders? So we need to get a platform where even if I can reach few thousand people, that's few thousand more than I had. And that is kind of what motivated, because working around food insecurity, working about hunger, around poverty, there is no one person, one organization can do anything.
Yeah.
We need everybody to stand up and have an understanding of poverty or hunger or food insecurity really is, and what are the real solutions. So that is how we kind of got to starting this podcast. So far, it's been great. It's been just over 2 months. We have been live. We have around, not a lot, but a little over 6,000 subscribers.
That's a lot in a short amount of time.
In the short amount of time it is. We are very thankful.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because we had some amazing guests who has a lot of following, and they are having those conversations.
That's awesome. So here's my next question. And you mentioned your 9-year-old daughter.
Yes.
I'm wondering, was there something that you have learned, like when it comes to your leadership skills or being you are the CEO of the year, according to a news award, that actually was taught by your daughter to you?
So a lot. One of the things that I say this loud and clear, that it is not always easy to have a very busy professional life and a very high stress professional life and devote enough time to your family.
Yes.
It is never easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who anybody says.
Although I thought in Canada we have work-life balance.
We do have a great work-life balance if you choose to. That is the key word.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I believe in work-life integration.
Exactly, that's the word.
Especially because we're passionate about our work.
100%.
It's a calling, it's not work.
100%. For my current role that I have, can I work Monday to Friday 9 to 5 and still run the organization? 100%. But would that make me satisfied?
No.
That's the problem.
Because you have such a big goal.
And that is exactly the issue.
Yeah.
So it is not easy. And this is a challenge for mostly founders, because when a founder is in operation, they are dealing with their baby. And it is never easy to let your baby go.
Yeah.
Even when my 9-year-old tells me, Daddy, and the school she goes is literally across the street from my home. And she says, oh, next year I want to walk to school by myself. And I'm like, oh, hell no, not happening. And she's like, it's right from here to here. Why can't I go by myself? I'm like, I don't know. Why not? But you're just not doing it. But it's the same thing. You just can't let it go for your own baby. For a founder, it's very similar. And it's
Yes.
very difficult.
Yes.
It's not just a job for me. It is my baby. If my baby does well, I'm a proud daddy.
Yeah.
If my baby sucks, then I'm a terrible dad.
Yeah.
So that is a huge challenge, is to keep that balance.
Yeah.
But one thing, to get to your actual question.
Yeah, you actually just told me about a very interesting story with your daughter. That happened 2
Exactly. And I'm
weeks
going to
ago.
say that because that is exactly where I am dealing with right now. The kids, the youth right now, they're way advanced in their mindset than I was actually when I was their age.
Yes.
Which is great, but it challenges us. And the great story, I'm going to say this because I just told you a few minutes ago. Couple of weeks ago, my daughter was having a tantrum, like many 9-year-olds would. And she said something called, like, shut up. And I said, whoa, hold on. You can't talk like that to your parents. You cannot say shut up. And she said, why not? I said, no, that's not the right thing to do. And she answered saying, it's my right.
Okay.
I said, no, that's not your right. And she said, well, that's my human right. I can say what I want. I said, no. And that's not how it works. So then it occurred to me, where does she even know human rights? Like,
That's
where is she getting that?
Vocabulary for a 9-year-old.
Exactly. So I sat her down and I said, okay, tell me more. What do you know about human rights? And she said, from you. You talk about food as a human right. So I know human right. I'm like, okay, I can't blame her on that. So then she said, so Daddy, what else is a human right?
Oh, smart question.
So, yeah. So I said, housing. People need to have a safe place to live. That's a human right in Canada. So then her next thing was, what about water? Is water a human right? I said, yeah. Clean drinking water is a human right in Canada.
That reminds me of Maslow's pyramid of needs. Yeah.
100%. So at that moment, she said, hold on. So water is a human right, but so many indigenous people in Canada do not have clean drinking water. Why? Honestly, I had no idea.
So
I
how
had
did
no
you
answer.
reply
I
to her?
told her I have no idea. I'm sorry, I have no idea the answer why, other than it's a political will. And she said, okay. And so our local member of parliament, we know him really well. He is in our community a lot. And he used to be a federal minister of defense for Canada till a few months ago. So she said, well, on the way back home today, can we stop at Uncle Bill's house? So I'm like, why would you go to Uncle Bill's house? He's like, you don't have an answer. He's a federal minister, so he should have an answer for me.
She said that?
And
A 9-year-old?
I am looking at her saying, how do you even know that this is a federal jurisdiction? It took me forever to figure out whether it's provincial, federal, or municipal, or who's in charge of this. But that kid, but this is just not my daughter's story. The young children nowadays are so well advanced, and may it be technology, may it be schools, may it be all of this combined. And what they teach us, not only about leadership, about life, it changes how we look at things. It completely changes how we look at things.
Wow.
Like, she teaches me things about entrepreneurship.
Wow.
And she teaches me about negotiation. And it was funny because I told her, I said, with negotiation, you should be a lawyer the way you always argue with me. And she spent 25 minutes arguing with me why she shouldn't be a lawyer. So I said, exactly, that's the point. You should be a lawyer because you just did this. But that is the whole point, like, to reason. It is very different. At that age, I was happy with the eraser that smells like orange and keep smelling it. Oh, this smells so good. I was happy with that. But this generation, it's amazing.
That gives me a lot of hope about our future, because nowadays, I mean, Maybe it was the same when we were kids. The older generations were always like, oh, the new generation, like Generation Z, they don't want to work anymore. And this and that, right? A lot of people are like complaining,
100%.
comparing it with themselves. But this gives me a lot of hope. That's
It
good to
is,
know.
and I say this clearly to my staff, where most of my staff is a lot younger staff, and I say it very clearly. I am not here to make sure you work hard.
Yeah.
I'm here to make sure you work smart.
Smart and make an impact.
Exactly. If you can do something using Grok or Chat GPT in 3 seconds,
Yeah.
I don't need you to spend an hour to not use that AI platform to do it from scratch.
Absolutely.
But don't be stupid about it.
Yeah.
If you're using it, make sure you edit it to make sure that it really what you want to say. Because AI at the end of the day is also something to do with the human, and there are mistakes.
Absolutely.
There are mistakes that happen. So, and that is what I tell even my daughter. And one thing I always tell her, I said, listen, I am never going to tell you what you need to be when you grow up. That's on you. But one advice I'll give you, doesn't matter what you do, you need to be the best. If you decide that I love mopping floors, great. Be
Become
the best mopper.
mopper.
Exactly. And that is your success story.
Oh, nice. Okay. Like you coming originally from India, and now you told me you were in the US before coming to Canada. I think you left your home when you were 19 years old.
Yes.
Did your parents tell you what to do?
Not at all,
Or
because...
how did you end up in the US and in Canada?
Oh my God, do I have to tell that story? Okay, I will. I'm just kidding.
The short story, the
Yeah,
elevator.
no,
pitch,
it's,
because I have 5 more questions
Okay.
for you.
No, the thing is, when I decided to leave India, I didn't tell my parents.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they heard that I'm leaving the day before I was leaving.
So you were living in Mumbai at that
Yes.
time, right? So without your parents then?
No, I was living with my parents.
Oh, and you just disappeared.
No, I told them the day before. So I did all the paperwork. I found a job. I got my visa. I didn't even tell them I was going to get visa. I just said I'm going out with my friends early in the morning for a run, because we had to go and give the visa papers in early in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they would say whether you get the visa or not. So I had everything. So I went early in the morning and I did it. Once I got the visa, I took the visa, went straight to a travel agent, and I saved up working part-time some money to buy my flight ticket. So I went there, bought my flight ticket. The flight was next day. I came home and said, guess what? I'm going. And of course, for a while, my parents didn't speak to me. That's understandable, because my dad was in a very good job back in India. He was actually working for a German company called Boehringer Mannheim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was the Indian.
Boehringer.
Yeah. So, and he was the Indian director of sales for India. So he had a great job in pharmaceuticals, and he was always hopeful that I will follow his footsteps, because everybody in that industry knows him. I will have a really honeymoon time. That Mr. Roy's son, that's okay. There's a very quick learning curve, and that is something I didn't want to. My thing was, I do not want to be pampered because I'm your son. I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to do something that you've never done before.
Wow. I love that attitude, that energy, the willpower, also like the risks that you are taking, basically.
Yes. And risk, and the other thing that I got to tell you this, that especially in India, one thing that I've learned, and I see that in my kid now, and I learn that more and more as the day goes, is the resiliency.
I see. Resilience is one of the key.
It is key.
Keywords we get from this podcast, actually.
100%.
So, if we speak about your wife, your child, your community members, friends, how would they describe of who you are?
Everybody will say differently, and no, don't ask my family. They're going to say different things.
Like beyond the public success and the impact it's making, the person.
I think I am one of those people who do not have a social life, because my social life is my work life.
Yeah.
When I need to have social life, I go to work events and show up. So that is a big part of it. If anybody has to describe me, passionate and focused.
Nice.
And I do not take
and
focus, and I do not take no for an answer.
I love it.
And my staff knows that, and they joke about it by saying no point telling him no, because he's just going to say no.
Yeah, we heard
let's
this
keep
a
on
couple
this.
of times today, and maybe that's also where your dad's sales, like he
The
probably is good
genes,
in.
the sales
Yeah, this
genes,
exactly is
100%.
coming from.
And one thing that I'm going to say this here, because this was an advice my dad always gave me when I was in school and trying to figure out my career path. And he was very similar to what I tell my daughter now, but he always used to tell me in a slightly different way. He said, do in your career what you would do for free. And if you can do that, you'll have success.
Oh, I love it. Do in your career what you would do for free.
Exactly.
Which then brings me back, because I can see that hunger here, like
No puns intended.
you work to end hunger, right?
Yes.
But what are you hungry for on this human personal level? Is there something else beyond of what you've already shared with us?
Yeah, like personally, I want to be that person who would have those conversations to end hunger. There is no reason in 2025, 2030, 2035, anybody in this world with technology needs to go to bed hungry.
Yeah.
Nobody. There's absolute. If we can have trillions of dollars fighting each other,
Yeah.
and we can't feed people, we can spend trillions of dollars going to the moon trying to find another alien planet. We can do all of that, but we can't basically feed people.
Yeah.
There's a problem there.
So I'm always a big fan of this one action. Like after my trainings, coaching, whatever I do, I always tell people, okay, from the whole conversation we just had in the podcast or whatever, what's that one action that you're going to take from today? What would be your advice on this one action you want us to take? Because I'm a believer, like, again, no matter which country, how rich or poor you are, we all have some kind of resources.
100%.
So what can we do to help you on not just like your zero hunger project? I mean, at the end, it's coming from the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. What can I do? What can the listeners do?
No, that's a great question. But one thing I say is my passion is hunger. Everybody's passion is not. And we need to be real about that. But doesn't matter. And if your passion, let's say, is housing or your passion is business, if I try to get you to do something on hunger, you're not going to do it.
They're not passionate about it.
So I don't want you to do anything about hunger if you're not passionate.
Oh, I love it.
But one thing I say is doesn't matter what that passion is, whatever that is, that's going to make this world even this tiny bit better than how you found it, don't take no for an answer, go for it. And that is one thing I say. I came to this world, I found this world a way.
Yeah.
And when I die and go, I want people surrounding me to say, well, he did something to make this world a better place. And that is more than any bank balance that I would ever need.
So that's the one action that we're going to start taking. How can we support you specifically in your project?
Perfect.
Because now you have this challenge with people's mindset. You need more donations. Well, you have the 3 layers of your organization, but you really taught me last night on how you want to level this up. This is not just about Scarborough.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Or about Toronto or Canada. This is
It's
about
about the
like
world.
the whole world.
It's the
That's why
globe.
you also speak around the world.
100%.
How can we help you, or what do you need?
So there's a couple of things. One thing I always say, that there is nobody in this world, no president of any country who can build a wall that's going to touch the sky. So we are one world and we all need to work together.
Yes.
But the thing what you can do and anybody listening can do for us, for me, or for my cause is very simple. You may not be passionate about solving the hunger issue. That's normal. You might have another passion.
Yeah.
But you might know somebody who is. So if you listen to our podcast, pick up my book. It's in every channel that you can find, Amazon, everywhere. Read about, if you're a good reader, read about the challenges, because this book not only talk about global hunger challenges, it talks about some success stories around the world and some failures around the world, what programs failed in some countries. So we learn from it. So if you are, and if nothing, just give me a follow on my social media, repost, like things, and maybe somebody from your circle will find the passion and find this information helpful to make a little bit different in their world.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a powerful podcast here today in Hong Kong. Thank you so much for making time from your busy schedule.
Of course.
It was amazing to meet you. I can't wait to see you in Toronto one day.
Absolutely.
And
Should
meet
be
your
there.
community, like really like see it and experience it.
We need to get you there.
I'd love to. Guys, again, sharing is caring. You've heard it, right? So please like, subscribe, follow his podcast, buy his amazing book, and also send this podcast to your friends because I personally really believe in a butterfly effect or domino effect. So spread it. Thank you so much for listening, and see you for the next episode. And thank you so much to you as well.
Thank you.
Safe
Thanks for your
travels
time.
back to Canada.
And
you're
you
gonna
to
meet-
Shanghai.
You're going to meet the Prime Minister, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Wow,
The day
the
I
new
get back,
one.
the new Prime Minister. That's the plan.
All the best.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, guys.